Hi, you're a student. That means you're reading all the time. I know this. And here's something else I know is that the way we read changes depending on what we're going to read and why we're reading it. Now, in a class like this, I'm sometimes giving you articles or books that I want you to read because I want you to analyze them. And of course, to analyze something means to break it apart, to understand not just what it's saying, but something more important. Let's talk about analyzing Amy S. Choi's What Americans Can Learn from Other Cultures. The first thing I want to talk about is the value of understanding the purpose of what somebody writes. In other words, why is Choi writing? Well, you'll notice she's talking about a lot of TED Talks. And this blog that she's writing is actually on the TED Talk website. Her purpose is to review a series of TED Talks that connect food and culture. And in doing that, she's identifying multiple claims about the links between food and culture. And she names those claims as she goes through them. And so when we're analyzing a text, when we want to understand it a little bit more deeply, it's really important that we identify the claims. And then we ask, is there any evidence for those claims? Now, what do I mean by a claim? Well, a claim is an assertion. It's a statement that somebody is making about a topic. You might say it's an opinion. I call it a claim because it's made a little bit more officially. But because a claim is an assertion, we can agree with it or we can disagree with it. And that's the reason why authors should support their claims with evidence and examples. Now, just as an aside, if you're writing about a claim, you don't want to say, she makes a claim about food and culture. No, a claim should be worded as a complete sentence. So not just she makes claims about food and culture, she claims that food and culture are intrinsically linked. That's something that somebody could agree with or disagree with. Now you might be wondering why I have pictures of fruit jello there next to this discussion about claims and evidence. Well, thank you, E. Shelley Reid, whose section, Balancing Fruit Jello and Arguments, allows us to talk about this in a metaphoric way. It's hard to know how to make claims, and it's hard to know how much evidence we need. And so one of the challenges we writers face, E. Shelley Reid says, is learning to balance our writing that states our theories and arguments, that provides our evidence and examples. Super hard to do. She asserts good writers blend argument and evidence as they write so that readers get both elements together all the way through. And so when we're analyzing a text, we're looking at what is the assertion, what is the thing that the author is stating that we could disagree with, and how is the author backing it up? In the case of this metaphor, the arguments are like the jello, and the evidence and examples are like the fruit. There's that balance. If we have too much fruit, we might not know what to do with it. Too much jello, it just melts all over the place. So we want to have that balance. Now, there are lots of different types of evidence. Personal experience is a type of evidence. And you'll notice that Amy Choi starts with personal experience. She talks about how as a Korean American, her favorite comfort foods are the types of foods she grew up with. Korean foods, a plate of kimchi, some rice, some fried spam. Don't think fried spam is Korean. but that's a whole other thing. And because she says that, that's evidence that food and culture are linked. I did not grow up eating kimchi. And so, although I like it, it's not a comfort food for me the way macaroni and cheese is a comfort food. And I think you probably have some comfort foods, some foods that just make you feel like you're at home. And they may be linked to your culture. Other types of evidence, unpublished reports, published reports. And by the way, by publishing, I don't just mean it's written down in words, because a TED Talk is a published report. Celebrity testimony. If you doubt the value of celebrity testimony, just ask yourself why celebrities are always trying to sell you something in commercials, why companies would pay them lots of money to make claims about their products. Anyways, expert opinion, people who are authoritative in that field, and on and on and on. We'll talk about that more later in the semester. My point here is if we want to understand a text, we need to look for the claims and evidence. It allows us to say, what is the author really trying to say? And how seriously do I want to take this? In examining for claims and evidence, I recommend annotating. Now, like I said, you can print up a paper if you're most comfortable with that, or you can annotate on your screen. I want to show you an example of me annotating using Diigo. I regularly use Diigo and Hypothesis to annotate. Now, here's the article. And you'll notice I have some highlighting here. I'm using Diigo, and I can highlight, and then I can create a sticky note that allows me to take notes. Here's my sticky note. I've highlighted our comfort foods map who we are, where we come from, and what happened to us along the way. That's an assertion she's making. And so I just label it, and I put that claim in my own words. In fact, here, I just want to add a little bit, claim. And then I'm going to put her claim in my own words. That's the annotating part. Because if I just put a highlighter there, I might forget. Why is that there? Her point is that the foods make us feel like we're at home, reflect our identities and our experiences. Save. And then we have Jennifer 8 Lee, looks for general so. And this is evidence. In fact, it's evidence from a journalist who's done a lot of computer work. So she's not an expert on food. Well, I suppose we're all experts on food. And this quote from Jennifer 8 Lee basically restates Choi's claim about comfort foods to show that foods that make us feel great are the foods that mean something important to us. And so not only is Choi highlighting this and emphasizing this to send us to the TED Talk, but she is adding evidence to support her claim about comfort foods. And here's another piece of evidence from Jennifer Berg. And this Jennifer Berg is an authoritative figure because this is her area of expertise. And notice in the place I've highlighted, it says exactly why she's an authority. She's the director of a graduate food studies program at New York University. And then there's also a quote from there as evidence. One more thing, all those subtitles are claims. It isn't a complete sentence or idea, but we can easily reword this as a claim. The food we eat is part of our identity. We can reword it all kinds of ways, and I added another way. The food we eat tells other people about our identity. By annotating, it slows me down so that I can look for the assertions and I can look for the evidence and I can make note of it. I'm going to ask you to create a claim chart. And it looks just like this. On this Canvas page, you have a link that will allow you to create a claim and evidence chart. And I'm asking you to go through Choi. Here's my claim chart, just the first 2 entries. The foods that make us feel like we're at home are the foods that reflect our identities. That's the claim in my own word, but here's the claim in Choi's words. And here's her evidence, the quotation from Jennifer 8 Lee. I'm going to identify that as a published report. And then here's the quotation from Jennifer Berg. That's expert testimony, because Berg is an expert in the field. Here's the second claim I identified. The foods we eat represent our distinct identities. Here's a quote, and this isn't a quote from Choi, it's a quote from Dan Barber's TED Talk. So that's a published report. But Choi also adds a quotation from Ellen Gustafson, and that's expert testimony. So now it's your turn. Your first essay is going to ask you to identify and summarize a claim from Choi's article, and then illustrate it with your own examples and evidence. But in order to do that, you're going to need to examine Choi's text again. This time you're taking notes using annotation tools if you want to learn how to use them, and then you're filling into the chart. You're filling in the chart.